The Woman from Mars.
Here is a story of the newspapers of a certain prefecture once printed in pieces over the space of 2 strange weeks. And here at last is the piece they never printed at all. It began, as these things often do, with a fire. At 2 o'clock in the morning on March 26th, a storeroom on the grounds of the prefectural girls' high school caught fire. It stood in a far corner of the athletic field, behind the archery range, an old wooden building with the only thatched roof left standing in the whole city. The wind was fierce that night, and for a while it looked as though the blaze might reach the main school building. It didn't. The fire chief and his men headed out before dawn, and the official story, printed the next morning, was almost comforting in its dullness. An abandoned storeroom burned to nothing. No injuries, no damage to the school itself. Everyone breathed out. Then, combing through the wreckage at first light, the firemen found a body. It was burned past any hope of telling whether it had been a man or a woman. The flesh of the torso and legs had charred down to a kind of black wool, fused to the bones beneath. When the university performed the autopsy, though, they found enough. The body was a girl's, 19 or 20 years old, and someone had gone out of their way to see that she burned. The fuel in the room had been arranged with peculiar care around her hips, as though whoever set the fire wanted to be certain that whatever had happened to her there would never be provable again. The police read it as we all would, a crime of passion, murder dressed as arson. And because it was that kind of case, they did what police do with that kind of case. They said nothing. For a full week, the papers ran nothing at all, while behind closed doors, detectives worked the case they were calling, in the halls of the precinct, simply Miss Charcoal. No name, no suspect, no motive anyone would print. Rumor did what it always does when the truth goes quiet. It filled the silence with something worse. By the end of that week, whispers were already calling the case unsolvable, a stain not just on the school, but on the whole machinery of the prefectural police. And then, without warning, on the 8th day, the papers were told they could print again. Which meant, everyone understood, that the police believed they had finally found a thread worth pulling. Here's what that thread looked like as it played out across 2 more impossible weeks. Headmaster, teacher, clerk, Viscount's daughter, one after another, unraveling. And here, waiting at the very end of the string, is the girl herself, in her own words, telling you exactly why. Chapter 1. A fire with no fingerprints. The site itself made no sense as a crime scene, and that was the first thing that troubled the detectives. The old storeroom stood in a corner nobody used. No one but the janitor ever went near it, and it sat well clear of anything that could produce a stray spark. That argued for arson. But the arsonist who had been plaguing the school for months, the one setting fires against the main building itself, worked in a completely different style. This felt like something else entirely. Someone had wanted this fire in this exact room. There was broken glass scattered in the ash, bottle glass by the look of it, though since the room had spent years as a junk closet, that told the investigators nothing. No blood could be recovered from the corpse. The fire had seen to that, which meant there was no way to test for poison, for carbon monoxide, for anything that might explain what killed the girl before the flames reached her. They couldn't even determine whether she had died a virgin, or by accident, or by someone else's hand entirely. And yet the case for murder held. Something about the scene, the placement of the body, the deliberate stacking of fuel, refused to read as anything but intentional. The whispers about a crime of passion would not go away. The school itself had been on spring recess since March 19th, so the dormitory stood empty, not a single boarder on the grounds that night. The old caretaker couple who lived on the property and the staff member on night duty were questioned as a formality and cleared just as quickly. Nothing in their accounts raised a flag. As for the theory that some drifter had slipped a girl from outside onto campus, the school sat behind a high concrete wall, and there was no sign anywhere that anyone had climbed it, which left the storeroom itself, the building's own history, oddly worth a second look. It had once been a genuine piece of old Japan, the last thatched roof left standing in the city, 2 stories of a proper old house left untouched when the school was built around it because the headmaster, Morisu Reizo, had wanted it kept as an etiquette classroom, a place for the girls to practice the formalities of tea and posture in a room that still smelled of the country it was replacing. Later, when a purpose-built tea house went up near the front gate, a gift from the alumni, the old building lost its function. It became simply storage, sports equipment, a dead blackboard, old lamps, empty bottles, a broken rattan chair, junk piled 2 stories high, and evidently more than enough kindling to make a body disappear into wool-black char in a single night. Headmaster Morisu himself cut a sympathetic figure in those first reports. A devout Christian, unmarried by choice so that he might give his whole life to the school. 30 years without a single scandal to his name. Decorated more times than anyone in the prefecture could count. The very model, everyone agreed, of what an educator should be. On the night of the fire, he'd been at his lodgings across town, but the moment word reached him, he'd rushed to the scene himself, personally seeing the school's sacred portrait and its important papers carried to safety before he so much as thought of his own comfort. People praised his composure for days afterward, and then he simply stopped being seen. He confined himself to his rented room, refusing every visitor. And when a senior teacher, a Miss Torama, gray-haired and long at the school, went to check on him for a routine matter, she came back with an unsettling account. The headmaster, she said, seemed to believe the whole burden of the tragedy rested on his own shoulders. If some intruder had gotten past the gate he kept so carefully locked after 6 each evening, then the failure was his, and his alone, to answer for. It sounded, to everyone who heard it, exactly like the kind of thing a decent man would say. It would not sound that way for very much longer. Chapter 2. The Letter in the Dark. Grief, in a man like Morisu, was supposed to look a certain way. Quiet, dignified, a private sorrow borne with a straight back. For the first few days, it did. Then, on the night of March 31st, 1 week to the day after the fire, a letter arrived at his lodgings. A woman's hand on the envelope. No one, not even his landlady, ever learned what it said. What they did notice was the change in him. He stopped answering when spoken to. He would appear at his landlady's door and simply stand there, weeping without a word, bowing again and again as though begging forgiveness for something he could not name. Once, he was heard on the 2nd floor, urinating out over the street below while laughing, a wet, helpless kind of laughter that had nothing happy in it. At night, the whole boarding house woke to him shouting into the dark. "It's him! It's him! Miss Charcoal! It's him! Mars! Mars! The devil! The devil!" By the next day, he had stopped eating entirely and lay in bed as though ill. That evening, when Miss Tarama came by on school business, the landlady assumed he was still resting and went up to wake him for his visitor. The bed was empty. On the pillow lay two things: a long letter, already opened, in the same woman's hand as before, and beside it a second letter, freshly written, addressed to Miss Tarama herself. A suicide note, everyone assumed at first glance, though no one could say for certain, because in the chaos that followed, the school notified, the police notified, half the staff turned out to search the streets, both letters vanished. Neither the landlady nor Miss Tarama could say who had taken them, or when, or where. Both insisted when pressed that they had never read a word of either one. There was one more thing. Tucked away, forgotten, in the back of his own closet, wrapped in white cloth and thick with dust and tarnish, stood a bronze bust of Morisu himself, the very likeness that half the city believed was still being sculpted in Tokyo by the celebrated Asakura Seiyun, funded by 3 years of alumni donations toward a monument that, as far as anyone had been told, did not yet exist. It had existed apparently the whole time. No one could explain why he'd hidden it. No one could explain the letters, or who might have carried them off in front of so many witnesses without a soul noticing. What everyone could agree on was this: whatever those two letters said, they were the reason the most respected man in the prefecture had started screaming about Mars and devils in the middle of the night, and whoever had walked off with them, right under the noses of the search party, was starting to look less like an innocent bystander and more like the one thread the police had been waiting a week to pull. The station master, who knew Morisu by sight, reported cautiously that a bare-headed man matching his description, beard grown out, coat filthy, had bought a ticket for Osaka and boarded the last train out of the city. The search moved south. Chapter 3. Everyone is Unraveling. By telephone from Osaka. The headmaster had indeed gone south, and early on the morning of the 3rd, he turned up wandering the streets near Nakanoshima, mud-caked, his formal coat in ruins, stopping strangers at random. "Do you know the woman from Mars? Has Miss Charcoal come by? Where is Amakawa Utako?" None of it's true. None of it. It's slander. Slander! Officers took him into protective custody and wired the prefecture. By the time the vice principal, a Mr. Kobayakawa, could catch the 11 o'clock train south to collect him, the school back home had already fallen apart without either of them. While the rest of the staff scrambled to prepare for the new term, a junior custodian found Miss Tarama, 42 years old, decades at the school, hanging dead in the staff restroom. And before the shock of that had even settled, someone noticed that the school clerk, a hunchbacked man named Kawamura Hideaki, 51, 30 years at Morisu's side, and nearly as much a fixture of the school as the headmaster himself, had also disappeared. A quick check of the safe explained why. The passbooks were gone. Over 5,000 yen collected for the headmaster's statue fund, plus another 820 from the Alumni Association. The bank confirmed it within the hour. Around noon, Kawamura had walked in, withdrawn nearly the entire balance, and left in visible haste. His wife, it turned out, had abandoned their house on the edge of town at the same hour, taking nothing, packed for travel. The two of them were gone. What made it strange, what made everyone at the school stop and reconsider, was that both Tarama and Kawamura had spent years all but worshiping the headmaster. Both had been, by every account, more anxious than anyone about his fate. The news that he'd been found alive should have been the one piece of good news in the whole affair. Instead, one of them was dead by her own hand within hours of hearing it, and the other had emptied the safe and vanished with his wife the same afternoon. There was one more detail from the Osaka report, almost an afterthought at the bottom of the wire, that would matter more than anyone in that newsroom could have guessed. The name Morisu kept shouting in the street. Amakawa Utako belonged to a graduate of that year's class, a gifted athlete the other girls had nicknamed, for reasons no one bothered to explain to the reporter, Miss Mars. She'd taken a newspaper job in Osaka right after graduation. It looked very much as though the headmaster, in whatever state his mind had reached, had gone south specifically to find her. Whatever the connection was between that girl and the burned body no one had yet named, the police were treating it, from that afternoon on, as the center of the case. Chapter 4. A Hat on the Cross. Just when it seemed the story could not tangle itself any further, the Catholic Church on Kagandori produced a piece of evidence nobody could explain. It was a Sunday. The congregation gathered, as always, for morning prayer, and when the altar doors were opened, something was hanging from the silver crucifix above it. A black bowler hat, and beside it, hooked over the same arm of the cross, a flower hairpin in the style worn by a young geisha. Cherry blossoms in red, with silver ornaments hanging from the stem. The hat's lining bore a name. It was Morisu's. The hairpin's owner, no one could say. Both Adams went to the police, who, already strung tight from 2 weeks of dead ends, descended on the church within the hour, sealed the doors, and searched the sanctuary top to bottom. They found nothing out of place. The first woman to enter that morning, questioned on the spot, swore no one had come near the altar before her. It was only back at the station, examining the hat more closely, that they found the mark that changed everything. On the inside brim, pressed deep enough to leave an impression, the clear print of upper front teeth, incisors and canines both, bitten hard into the felt. A specialist was called in and gave his opinion without much hesitation. The bite belonged to a strong, healthy adolescent, which meant, if the theory held, that whoever had slipped into a locked church, hung a hat and a hairpin on a crucifix, and vanished without a trace, was young, and possibly the same figure tied to everything else that had happened since the fire. It also meant that Torama and Kawamura, who half the city had already convicted in whispers, could not have been behind this particular act. Whatever secret had driven one of them to a noose and the other to flight, it did not, on its own, explain a hat on a cross. The case, which had briefly seemed to be closing, had just thrown open another door. Chapter 5. The Viscount's Daughter. The hat and the hairpin gave the police their first real lead, and they moved on it fast. The first woman into the church that morning, a young parishioner named Tonomiya Aiko, 19 years old, was taken into a side room and questioned for hours. Around 3 in the afternoon, the detectives allowed her to go home while the investigation continued. She used the freedom to disappear. Slipping past the officers watching the house, she gathered her mother, bedridden, gravely ill, and vanished, leaving behind only a letter addressed to her father. The police, strangely, said almost nothing about the failure. No public search was announced. It was, everyone agreed privately, one of the strangest silences of the whole case. Aiko's father, however, spoke freely to reporters who came to his door. He was Tonomiya Aishiro, the prefecture's school inspector, and, as it happened, grandson of one of the most powerful men in the national government, a retired field marshal and duke. Grief and disgrace sat visibly on him in equal measure. "I'm at a loss for words," he told them. "That my daughter could have committed arson, murder? I still can't believe it. That this girl called the woman from Mars, Amakawa Utako, and my Aiko were close friends at school? That's news to me, hearing it just now from you. Whether there was some quarrel between them, some rivalry over love, I have no idea. I only want it known, for my daughter's sake and my family's, that I don't wish this made public beyond what you already have. As for why she took only her mother with her, I don't know that either. We had no secrets in this house, none I was aware of. My wife and my daughter were both women of some means. They won't want for money for a while. Where they've gone, I have no idea at all. I intend to resign, but I'd ask that too stay off the record until it's official." Aiko's letter, left for him, read, "Father, thank you for everything all these years. Mother and I are leaving today so that we won't burden you any further and so that Mother's illness won't worsen from the worry of staying. Please accept our thanks for a lifetime of care. Everything that happened at my old school is my failure and mine alone. The girl who burned to death was Amakawa Utako, and I can promise you it was by her own hand. If I had only realized sooner what she meant to do, none of this would have happened. It's a terrible loss. I should also tell you, the hat and the hairpin on the church cross were my doing. I've already explained the reason to the police. As for the questions they asked me about you, Father, I told them the truth. I know nothing. Though from what they asked, it seems they already know a great deal about your private affairs from something Utako wrote to them before she died. I thought you should know that. I promise you I have no intention of harming myself. I only want to nurse Mother somewhere quiet until she's well again. So please, don't look for us. And please don't try to learn why I've done what I've done. It will be better for both of us that way. Please, take care of yourself. Aiko." The papers noted, almost gently, that Tonomiya Aiko had been the school's star pupil, its acknowledged beauty, its finest scholar, admired by everyone who'd known her. No one printed the letter that came after it. Until now. What follows was found among Aiko's belongings, unsigned but written in a hand the family recognized at once. The last letter Amakawa Utako ever wrote, meant to arrive exactly 1 week after she died. Everything from here forward is Utako's own account, in her own words. Chapter 6. Dear Headmaster, to Headmaster Morisu, from the woman from Mars, I am happy. Happier than I have any right to be. Because at last I get to have my revenge on you. If I really am the woman from Mars, then somewhere I am leaping for joy all the way to the top of the sky. They will find my body burned black. No face, no name anyone can read from it. And the papers will make a great deal of noise about it. I've already arranged the timing. A friend of mine is going to mail this letter and 2 others just like it, exactly 1 week after I start writing, which means you'll be reading it with my corpse already found, already gawked at, already written about. And I want you to know, if reading this doesn't move you to confess what you did, if you try to smile your way past it the way you smile past everything, there is a second letter, already written, waiting to go to the police the moment my friend judges its time. And if even that doesn't bring the truth out into the light, if you and the men who've helped you bury this the way you've buried everything else manage to bury this too, there's a third copy already circulating quietly, ready to surface later, whenever it will do the most damage. I have made very sure, Headmaster, that your responsibility for my death cannot simply be waited out. My friend is clever and steady, and she will not let that last copy slip. I don't intend to have thrown my whole life away for nothing. I want to hand you and every man like you, every selfish, corrupt, self-satisfied man rotting away at the center of this modern world, one dose of medicine, a spoonful of ground charcoal of the woman from Mars. It's fashionable these days, taking things ground to powder as medicine. This one should be potent. Ground charcoal of the woman from Mars. How's that for a rare prescription? Rarer, perhaps, than powdered Egyptian mummy. How does it taste, Headmaster? I imagine it's gone down clean. I imagine you feel purified, top to bottom. Ho ho ho, ho 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 ho. You'll want to know who is helping me carry out this revenge for the girl who burned. I'd advise against wondering too hard. Even if you worked it out, all you'd manage is fright. There'd be nothing left for you to do about it. She isn't avenging some passing grievance of mine. She has spent years serving a mother slowly dying of consumption and a stepfather who, thanks to you, has spent that same time drowning himself in every vice a man of leisure can afford. And she has done it all without a single servant in the house, quietly, so the world would never learn what was really happening behind that door. She is the most devoted daughter you will ever hear of, and she has spent years hunting, in silence, for the name of the devil who ruined her mother's life. The instant I told her your name, she didn't hesitate. She wanted her mother's wrong answered. She wanted her stepfather's shameless wandering stopped. So she agreed to help me. No conditions. Put plainly, it is precisely because her mother's heart is too gentle that she herself cannot bring the reckoning to you directly. So I have become black charcoal in her place. Do you understand now what my burning means? No. Even if we both burned to nothing, the two of us together, it still wouldn't be enough to settle what we're owed. Do you understand yet who is helping me? A man as pleased with his own cleverness as you are may still believe he's cleverer than this. He may not yet suspect how deeply she hates him, but he will the further he reads. I'll say it again, plainly, so there's no mistaking me. You have no choice, Headmaster, but to accept a burned girl's revenge in silence. Call it justice too quiet to see if you like, but you will confess what you've done, honestly, to the world, and disappear quietly from decent society, because that is the only path left open to you. And by the time you've read this far, you will already have guessed who is writing it. You'll be picturing that soft-hearted, easily moved little Miss Mars, capable of something this terrible, and the thought will make you shudder. Chapter 7. Noppo. Headmaster Morisu, you are my teacher, my elder, a man who lost his wife and child young and gave the rest of his life to God and to the education of girls like me. The whole prefecture has held you up as a model, decorated you again and again for it. There may be people who'll say that taking revenge on a man like that, whatever wrong he's done, isn't right. But Headmaster, I am the woman from Mars, exactly as you named me. I'm not an ordinary woman. So I decided I would strike one hard blow against the tyranny men allow themselves over women and shock the world with it. I wanted the world to know it isn't only built for men. And a man like you, the very picture of masculine vice, standing up in front of 1,000 young women as a model educator. I couldn't bear it. Not as a girl born in this country. Did you ever wonder what kind of childhood made me Headmaster? What I was thinking the day your hand first brushed against mine, and not long after, I had to become charcoal and curse your name. Would that story have honestly surprised you? Would you have understood, even for a moment, what the woman from Mars was for? You, and men like you, so comfortable in a morality built entirely for your own convenience. But I have to explain it anyway, otherwise you'll dismiss what I've done as some passing fit of temper, a performance. I have to prove in this letter how serious my burning curse really is, how deep and how deserved our grievance is, set against the cruelty of what you did. For the honor of the woman from Mars. For the vow of the charcoal girl. They called me Beanpole from the time I was small. My mother's other 2 daughters, my half-sisters, grew up ordinary-sized. I never understood why I alone came out built the way I was. My father always said I'd been born small and sickly, barely 600 on me, like I'd come early. But somewhere around 5 or 6, I started shooting up and never stopped. The day I started school, our homeroom teacher, a man with a little chaplain mustache, looked at me and laughed before he could stop himself. Well, aren't you a big one? Even as a child, I felt the shame of that laugh land somewhere deep. It was the first time in my life I remember feeling ashamed of myself, and it would not be the last. The headmaster of that school gave me the same look. Kinder, maybe, but the same look, and learned my name before he learned any other. So did the inspector who visited not long after. I'd like to think it was my grades that made me memorable. I never did well in anything but composition, calligraphy, drawing, and gymnastics. But I don't believe that's really why. My name traveled through the whole school fast. The older boys would call it after me from a distance. Beanpole Amikawa's got no man. She's got to grow her own. Climb a ladder just to fix her hair. I was a soft, tearful child at first. I cried, refused to go to school. Eventually I got used to it. Learned to turn and smile at whatever they threw at me. Lonely as that smile always was. I was most popular of all on sports day. By 2nd or 3rd grade, I could outrun the fastest boy in 6th. A newspaper once ran my photo under the caption, "Behold, the younger generation." And the picture, taken squinting into a summer sun, was apparently so funny that my own parents laughed until they had to sit down. I cried in front of the mirror for 2 days after that, though I never told anyone why. They'd have laughed even harder if I had. I understood, from before I can even properly remember, that I had been born to be laughed at. An ugly, overgrown girl who existed for other people's amusement. It was probably around 6th grade, worn down by that kind of loneliness accumulating year over year, that I started losing myself in poetry and novels. I suppose, thanks to all of you, I became a lonely, bookish girl a good deal earlier than most. Chapter 8. The Ruined Room. Girls' high school was gentler, on the surface. What waited for me there was a deeper, quieter kind of contempt. Aside from one single exception, none of the girls in my class, none of the teachers either, ever offered me a warm word. Everyone kept a strange distance, a cold little smile always in place, as though I were something faintly embarrassing, an invalid best not addressed directly. Talking to me seemed to strike people as its own small humiliation. But whenever an athletic meet approached, tennis, volleyball, running, suddenly everyone wanted me close. Teachers, classmates, upperclassmen, all fawning, feeding me raw eggs and extra fruit to keep me happy, pushing me out to compete whether I wanted to or not, telling me over and over that I was the pride of the whole school, never once noticing or caring how badly I wanted to hide this body they were so proud of. And the day after the meet ended, no one remembered my name again. I started to feel the insult even in the applause, in the cheering of teachers and students alike, watching me pull ahead of some other school's runner and leave her behind. Once, in the restroom, I overheard two younger girls talking. "Isn't she incredible, Mars-san?" "Wait, who's Mars-san?" "You don't know. Amakawa Utako. She's from Mars, that's why. No one on Earth can beat her. The headmaster said so himself. Everyone's been calling her that for weeks." "Oh, how awful of him. Though it's a good nickname. It really does suit how strange-looking she is." And still, soft as I was, I let myself be talked into it every time the next meet came around. Some cold, hollow feeling sitting in my chest the whole while. Past the far edge of the athletic field, tucked behind the tall firewall, stood the ruin of an old building. Once, they said, an etiquette classroom. Though by then the plaster had crumbled, the roof tiles had slid loose, weeds grew waist-high through the floor, and the termites had eaten the stairs and pillars down to lace, so the tatami sagged underfoot like a trap door waiting to give. During free periods, I would slip behind the restroom, along the archery range's fence, and up to the second floor of that ruin. There was a moth-eaten rattan chair up there. I would lie back in it, look out through what remained of the shutters at the strip of blue sky above the firewall, and let myself imagine, for an hour, that the great cold emptiness inside my chest and the great cold emptiness beyond that sky were the very same thing. I went at first only because I couldn't stand to be looked at on the field. Later it became something else, a secret pleasure I couldn't have explained to anyone. The emptiness in me and the emptiness past the sky felt more and more like a single substance. Dying began to seem like nothing much at all. I started to feel, with something close to peace, the great meaningless current of time and space flowing through everything, and to believe that whatever world I'd truly been born from lay out past that sky in some silent, scentless nothing. Everyone else seemed to be living inside that same vastness, laughing, weeping, leaping, dancing through it, gathering to it like ants to sugar, like butterflies to flowers, happily, blindly. All of it started to look meaningless to me, and in that stillness, I noticed something else. That ruined building, half-rotted, half-collapsed, filled with junk and dust and termites, much as the church on Kaigandori was the home of the headmaster's public virtue, had for years, secretly, been the nest of his vices. A man keeping up the appearance of a model educator on every side while working who knew what schemes with money and with women behind it, needed a room exactly like that one. That, I understood eventually, was the real reason he never let the building be torn down. When the police pressed, citing fire risk from the thatch, he always found a reason. No budget for the new storeroom, to string the prefecture along. I had no idea going up there every day to nurse my little private grief what nest I was studying in, what devil's wing beat was rising up unheard from underneath my rickety chair, what hell that wing beat would eventually drag me down into, a hell so deep that even burning to charcoal has not been enough to settle the account. Its wings belonged to 3 people. A black-furred, bear-shaped man, the headmaster. The hunched little clerk with a bald white head sitting on his shoulders like something separate from him, Mr. Kawamura. And a third, coming and going after them, Miss Torama, our English teacher. Built, we used to say, like an ugly Yorkshire pig. Those 3 were the devils nesting, unseen, in that ruin. Toward the end of every term, on afternoons after class, the headmaster and old Kawamura would come slipping in together, past the shadow of the toilet, along the forbidden path behind the archery range's fence, quite comfortable, quite familiar with the route. They'd settle into the junk-strewn 8-mat room directly below the chair I was lying in and talk, at length, about all sorts of things. Downstairs was safer for them than it looked, closed in by 2 layers of broken shutters and glass doors, enough to keep an ordinary conversation from carrying outside. But every word of it carried straight up to me. Most of what I heard concerned the alumni fund and the many creative ways it could be made to disappear. The school's grand piano, I learned, was logged in the books at 3,500 yen. It was, in truth, a 500 yen instrument bought second-hand. The new etiquette building by the front gate, funded by graduates at a reported cost of 12,000 yen, had actually cost something closer to 7,000, the rest pocketed along the way. I learned that the headmaster had been running the alumni fund through fictitious commodity trades in Kawamura's younger brother's name, splitting the proceeds between them. And I learned how he planned to cover the hole that scheme had left behind, a plan he'd apparently been sitting on for a while before he finally explained it to Kawamura. It had started, he admitted, with Miss Torama, a devout believer who worshipped the headmaster's character above almost anything else, and who taught our 5th-year English. He'd talked her into proposing, publicly, that the school raise funds for a bronze statue in his honor. The whole staff endorsed it. Letters went out to alumni across the country and to the families of current students. The response was overwhelming. Over 5,000 yen already sitting with Kawamura. Naturally, the donors wanted more than a bust for that kind of money. They wanted a full standing statue. And the headmaster, for reasons no one could quite understand, hated the idea with a passion that bordered on panic. "I am content with a bust," he insisted, red-faced. "I am not the kind of man who deserves a standing monument. The very idea is absurd." Poor Kawamura, caught in the middle of donors who wanted more and a headmaster who wouldn't budge, was at his wits' end. The real reason, when I finally understood it, was almost too petty to believe. The bust already existed. It had for 2 or 3 years, sitting, wrapped in white cloth, gathering dust and tarnish in the back of the headmaster's own closet, signed unmistakably on the base by none other than Asakura Seiyun, the celebrated Imperial Art Academy judge, the most famous sculptor in the country. Kawamura, sharp as he was, must have dug up the whole story somehow. On some pretext or other, he traveled up to Tokyo and called on the great man himself, who, knowing nothing of what had really become of the piece, answered him without a moment's hesitation. "Ah, that. I made that as a small repayment to Headmaster Morisu. Some years back I got a letter from him at a hot spring resort, asking me to come. He had work for me, he said. When I arrived, it turned out he wanted his own likeness made. Morisu is my mother's uncle. He paid my school fees clear through my education, so how could I refuse him? I found good clay from a tile works nearby, finished the bust inside a week, bought up every bag of plaster the local shops had, cast it myself in Tokyo, and sent it straight to him. Never showed it at a single exhibition. So it's still sitting there, unbuilt. I see. Please don't mention payment. It would be an honor simply to have a man of his standing represented by my hands. And if it's ever placed on your school grounds, and there's foundation work, a plinth, anything of that kind needed, do let me know. I'll come at my own expense. I wouldn't want a hired stonemason ruining the composition with a clumsy fence or garden. That was Kawamura doing his impression of the sculptor's voice, which I am now doing my impression of secondhand, so forgive whatever's been lost along the way. But hearing it, Kawamura was struck all over again by just how far the headmaster's cunning ran, and seeing how much more had come in than anyone expected, threatening to push the project toward the full standing statue the headmaster so badly didn't want. He decided to help however he could. The going rate for a proper statue these days, he'd say, coaching the story, even for just a bust, is 5,000 to 10,000 yen through a real sculptor. A standing figure could run 20 or 30. We're still short even for the bust. We can't possibly manage a standing piece. And so between the two of them, they killed the standing statue idea, agreed to quietly split most of the remaining balance once the already finished, already hidden bust was declared complete, and the headmaster breathed easy again. Afterward, still in that ruin, Kawamura laid out the next step. There's the graduation thank you ceremony coming on the 22nd. Have the top student present you with the total figure raised in front of everyone. Then hand the money back to me publicly. Say you're entrusting the statue project entirely to the school clerk. I'll get up and report that the famous Asakura Seiyun, a native son of this prefecture, has generously agreed to undertake the commission and is already at work. Everyone applauds. Everyone's satisfied. And that's the whole job done. The finer the stitching, the less anyone notices the seam. Not every conversation I overheard from that chair was so friendly. 2 or 3 times I heard real arguments, sharp voices, real anger. And it was through those that most of what I've just told you came clear to me. But it always ended the same way. The headmaster caving, the 2 of them making peace. All right, I understand. The books are your responsibility in the end, so I won't be unreasonable. Yes, I understand. Now, shall we go somewhere nice to celebrate the peace between us? The 3rd floor of that hot spring hotel. No one will ever spot us there, my friend. It's getting late tonight. Somewhere closer, maybe? Nonsense. A car gets us there in no time. Somewhere closer, people know our faces. The hotel's better. Total privacy. Total comfort. Even the governor slips out there now and then. My own little discovery. Is it really that extravagant a place? Extravagant doesn't begin to cover it. The full Southern Island treatment. I'll cover it. You bring that girl of yours. Ha, much obliged. No, she's a fun one. A bit unusual. I'll bring someone younger tonight myself. Conversations like that stayed lodged in my memory the way certain melodies do, for no reason I could name at the time. Piecing it all together, I understood. The headmaster was using his name and his position as a machine for making money, and using that money in some hidden place. to entertain his friends. None of it shocked me in the slightest. I am, soft-hearted, tearful girl that I supposedly am, I found it fascinating, irresistibly so. My curiosity got the better of me eventually, and 2 or 3 times on the way home from school, I rode the local line out to look at that hot spring hotel myself, walking around the outside, front and back, taking it all in. Watching and learning became its own kind of education. The great cold emptiness inside me only grew clearer, sharper, more like glass, the further into the world's ugliness I looked. I became, in a way, unshakable. No matter how much I was laughed at, mocked, I could smile back without flinching. The whole world, the whole earth even, began to look to me like a swarm of small insects, born into one great emptiness and crawling through it. And insects that did evil while they crawled, I decided, I could crush without much guilt. I should become a newspaper reporter, I remember thinking once. That might be interesting. Is a girl who thinks about the void like that a girl with no value? As a girl? My classmates called me the woman from Mars, or man-woman, whenever they thought of it. Everyone seemed to breathe a little sigh whenever they looked at me, relieved, maybe, that they hadn't been born the way I was. My own parents did the same. I could see it in their eyes whenever they looked at me. That flat, exhausted look of people who had simply stopped expecting anything. I remember it exactly. March 17th this year, the afternoon of our graduation ceremony. I'd come home and was changing out of my uniform when I overheard my parents talking in the next room, not troubling to lower their voices. We can't marry off the other 2 until this one's settled. I know. Might almost be a mercy if she just got sick and died. She's never so much as caught a cold, that one. Ha! No such luck. Well, if she's unmarriageable, there's other uses for a girl like that, I suppose. I want you to understand what it did to me hearing that. I had thought of myself by then as a tolerably strong-willed woman of the world. But underneath that, I was still holding with a burning kind of grip onto every scrap of affection I'd ever been given. To learn in that moment that I had been abandoned even by the last people obligated to love me, that was a particular kind of clarity I have never fully recovered from. I understood, hearing the cold contempt folded into their voices, a contempt that was really just love gone wrong, curdled by disappointment, that I had been shown, without either of them meaning to, the one door left open to me, to die quietly by my own hand, since I clearly wasn't fit to go on living any other way. And I understood, too, that even that door was closed to me, because I did not have it in me to actually walk through it. Whether any man reading this can understand what that particular grief feels like, too cowardly to kill herself, too broken to keep pretending to be the woman from Mars forever, I have no way of knowing. There was no room left in that great emptiness for me to stand. That same evening, not long after hearing them, I told my parents I was going to a picture show with a friend, put on a garish crepe kimono my mother had bought me and I had never once worn, and slipped out of the house without my sisters noticing. I climbed the concrete wall by the poplar tree near the school's side gate and dropped down behind the restroom on campus. Nothing to a girl my size. Then, for the first time in a while, I made my way back to that ruined building, meaning only to sit once more in that rattan chair, look out at the sky, and lose myself one more time in the old familiar emptiness. I remember worrying, absurdly, about scuffing my new felt sandals, picking my way through the dusk toward the old storeroom, the schoolyard empty, the stars unusually large overhead. I stepped through the doorway into the dark of the ground floor. Chapter 9. What the Dark Contained. A pair of hairy arms came out of that darkness and closed around me before I understood anyone was there. And into my ear, for the first time in my life, someone whispered words of love. "You came. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. You're the only one who can save a lonely old bachelor like me. I can't go on without you. Please, have some pity on a lonely man who's given his whole life to teaching. Please. We understand each other, don't we? Two lonely souls, all alone." I knew that voice. I knew it instantly. It was him. My whole body turned to stone around my own heartbeat. How does he know I'm here? That was the first thought that managed to surface. And then, almost as quickly, an explanation arrived, unbidden. The far window of the staff room looked straight down the path to the side gate. He must have seen me from there, on whatever errand had kept him late, and slipped ahead of me through the archer's range while I was still crossing the yard. I have always tried, by instinct, to think the best of people, even people doing things that made no sense. So even then, even held fast in the dark by a man I respected, saying things no teacher should ever say to a student, I didn't feel the wrongness of it the way I should have. What I felt was simply this: whatever had driven him to something this unlike himself must be serious. And my own nature, soft, unable to push back, kept me still, kept my head down, kept my hands from fighting free. How spineless I was. I understood, even then, that one sound from me could ruin the great man's name and standing forever, and that fear alone was enough to root me to the floor. Two lonely hearts, understanding each other. The words moved something in me despite myself. It felt, in that moment, like a fate I had no way of escaping. I never once suspected, not for a single second, that the great man everyone praised as a saint was, in fact, no saint at all. That he had been waiting there for someone else entirely, and had simply mistaken me for her in the dark. I knew, better than almost anyone, exactly what kind of money he stole and how. But I had believed all the same that where women were concerned, he was beyond reproach, faithful, even in his solitude, to the memory of his late wife. That a man that pure could be hiding a private grief like this seemed, in the moment, almost unbearably sad. That he would choose to share it with me felt, God forgive me, like an honor. And thinking that of all things, I lost whatever was left of my composure and simply wept, clinging to him in the dark. Time went on passing. I don't know how much of it. And then, what a wretched, degrading little dream that was. Miss Tarama arrived not long after. What she did to me in that darkness, I will spare you. What matters is that with everything I had left in me, I broke free of her and ran out of that building into the night. And then, once I was safely outside the wall, doubled back through the archery range and pressed my ear to the crack in the side door, and listened with a terrible, clear-headed attention to the argument that followed. I have never, before or since, heard the headmaster so afraid. Miss Tarama had him cornered, and she did not let him go easily. No, don't tell me it was a mistake. I'm not the only one, am I? You've done this to girl after girl. I know it all. The students whose grades you've fixed. I know exactly what you demand from them, and from their mothers, in exchange. Your merchandise is the exam papers in your pocket. I've got every name written down, every girl, every mother who's ever come to your rooms. I know exactly why your landlady keeps her mouth shut about it, too. And that's not the worst of it. This year's top student, Tonomiya Aiko. She's your own daughter, isn't she? Don't bother denying it. I've watched her face grow into yours a little more every day. Mendel's law is a frightening thing, isn't it? Daughters take after their fathers, sons after their mothers. And there she is, the very picture of you. You took advantage of poor, soft-hearted Misaka Tomeko back when she graduated, talked her, tricked her into marrying that handsome libertine, young Viscount Tonomiya. And then you used your little arrangement with him to torment that gentle, devoted lady twice, 3 times over, in secret, as your own private amusement. Don't tell me otherwise. I know exactly what you are. A man of no conscience whatsoever, hiding it behind 2 faces, quietly enjoying his own rottenness, the purest kind of selfishness there is. Only I and Misaka Tomeko, Viscountess Tonomiya now, know any of this. Not even Aiko herself suspects. She still thinks the world of you, believes every word out of your mouth. Do you have any idea what that kind of loyalty from her mother has cost her? We were girls in this very dormitory together, she and I, the dearest of friends. And you're the reason she spent 20 years crying. Don't tell me I don't know. I don't intend to stay quiet about any of it. I'm not some old-fashioned Japanese woman with no power of her own. Once I set my mind to something, I see it through. I raised 2 sons alone, on my own labor, and I know the world well enough by now. I know exactly how to make public what you said to sweet Misaka 20 years ago, begging her to pity a lonely bachelor. I lost track of most of what came after. My head was spinning too badly to hold it. But the gist, once the headmaster's frantic apologies had run their course, was this. He would raise Tarama to senior rank and see her salary increased, and in exchange, she would let the matter drop. Then, without pause, the 2 of them turned to discussing how to keep me quiet. I caught fragments. Osaka put the old junk to some use, laughter, but most of it was lost. I remember thinking, absurdly, that I would never repeat a word of any of it to anyone, and being almost offended that they thought I might. And then, near the end, this exchange, which I heard whole and clear. Understand this, Morisu. If you forget your promise about my rank and my salary, you stand to lose a great deal more than you think. I'll have both my sons graduated from university and technical school this spring. I have enough saved to live comfortably, regardless of what the world says about me. All I want beyond that is enough to see them married and to draw my pension in peace. I can make any of this public whenever I choose. Do you understand me, Morisu? Yes, of course. You have my word. This was a terrible misunderstanding, I promise you. Still, how did that girl even get in there? Something's not right about her. That was as much as I heard. I slipped away from the door, out past the firewall by the range, tidied my hair and my face at the public washroom near the gate, and went home as though nothing at all had happened. That night I lay awake until my wrists ached from how tightly I was holding my own chest, unable to sleep even a moment. I doubt a prisoner condemned to hang dreads the sunrise more than I dreaded that one. By morning, my whole body felt strangely, deeply wrong. The kind of exhaustion that follows brutal exercise. A sick heaviness. Sunlight through the window looking somehow yellow and foul. I stayed in bed the entire day for the first time in my life, telling my parents it was a cold. That evening, they sent for a young doctor who lived nearby, a university lecturer of some kind. But he found nothing wrong with me. No fever, pulse normal. He seemed genuinely puzzled, and before he left, he took a small sample of blood from my arm. I had no idea in my scattered state what that single drop of blood was about to do to both of us. 3 mornings later, I woke, finally, calm again. Thanks, I think, to the sleeping draft the young doctor had left the night before. I went out into the garden in my nightclothes and looked up, for a long while, at the blue morning sky through the eucalyptus branches. But oh, Headmaster, how sad I was that morning. I was, whatever anyone thinks of me now, still a woman underneath everything. And knowing what had happened was wrong, was shameful, I found I still could not make myself hate you for it. What moved me instead, God help me, was pity. Pity for whatever weakness, whatever cowardice had driven a man like you into doing something so ugly in the dark. And from that pity grew something worse, a kind of resolve that it was my place, a girl exactly like me, to save you from it, to guide you back, however strange the method, to the light. Perhaps, I told myself, that was the very purpose I had been put on this earth to serve. Save this lonely, wretched old man. Those words you'd whispered kept sounding in my memory, like they had come from somewhere true in you, however wrong the moment they were spoken in. I did not yet know it, but I had stopped being empty. Something in me, thanks to you, had begun waking up as a woman for the first time. What would you think of Osaka? My father asked me that the next morning before breakfast in the sitting room. My stepmother, who was usually so indifferent to anything concerning me, took obvious interest, drawing her chair close. Didn't you once say you wanted to be a newspaper reporter? I did think about it, once. You never minded photography either, did you? I love it. He knew perfectly well I'd had things published in magazines, placed in photo salons. I wondered faintly why he was suddenly asking as though it were news to him. There's a position then. A paper in Osaka wants a woman's sports reporter. Visiting the girls' schools, writing up the athletics programs, taking photographs. Headmaster Marisu came all the way to my office yesterday himself to say that if you're willing, they'd be thrilled to have you. Says they'll even arrange travel abroad eventually. It's 100 yen a month plus 3 months bonus. An opportunity like this doesn't come twice. If you agree, I'll telephone Osaka and you could leave almost immediately. I don't know, looking back, how I managed to stay as calm as I did. What I'd overheard 3 or 4 nights earlier in that ruined building had shaken me badly. But this, somehow, hit harder still. Hearing that the headmaster himself had arranged to have me sent away to Osaka broke something in me more completely than anything else had. I have never in my life felt more betrayed than I did in that instant. Let me think about it, I managed, and then my throat closed, and I began, without quite meaning to cry. My father leaned forward. What a rare opportunity. Even men with university degrees can't find work paying 30, 20 yen these days. And you're hesitating? Is there some reason you can't go to Osaka? I have never heard my father's voice that severe, before or since. When I looked up, both my parents were watching me with an expression I can only call stony. The look of people interrogating a serious criminal. And it frightened me badly enough that I answered without thinking. No, there's no reason. I only need a few days to think it over. It's my whole future, after all. Something passed between my parents in that moment. A look I couldn't read. My father cleared his throat. very deliberately. "Then let me ask you plainly, is there something you're keeping from us? Is that why you can't go?" I felt the question strike somewhere vital, but I steadied myself and shook my head, sighing as though the question were nothing. "No, nothing." "Then where were you?" my stepmother said, cold and quiet, cutting in from the side. "The night before last." I felt it like a silent bolt of lightning, and my head dropped without my willing it to. I must have gone white as a corpse. I could only shake, my breath coming in ragged little bursts, tears falling into my lap. My ruin is his ruin. His ruin is my ruin. The thoughts circled and circled, senseless, like a fan spinning in my skull. Whatever happened, this could not come out. The two of us were bound now to this one secret, condemned to carry it together down into whatever pit waited at the bottom. My father's voice reached me again, sharp and clear through all of it. "There's no use hiding it. The blood the doctor took the night before last, the university tested it. You're no longer a virgin. We know." My stepmother beside me let out a long, long sigh, colder somehow than anything a stranger could have managed. Chapter 10. The Blade and the Hotel. What a terrible power science has. That I was no longer clean. A thing so brief, so unreal even to me, that I could hardly believe it had happened at all. Could be read off a single drop of my own blood, with no room left for me to deny it. What a cruel judge science makes. I collapsed at their feet, on the carpet, with nothing left in me at all. My father demanded over and over that I name the man responsible. He swore there'd be no punishment for me, that they'd see me properly married to him, that they only wished they'd noticed sooner that someone cared for me this much. Both of them wept, begging me to trust in a parent's mercy, and I, crying harder than I have ever cried before or since, refused. I could not say his name. I could not bring myself to ruin him, even then. For the first time in my life, I disobeyed my parents outright. I betrayed the mercy they were offering me, all for his honor. I don't know how I didn't lose my mind that day. By noon, I had cried myself hollow and gone to bed, and, watched over by my two frightened, pale sisters, swallowed a large dose of Adolin and slept like the dead, hoping, somewhere underneath it all, that I might simply not wake up again. The next day, March 22nd, was the day of our thank you ceremony. The 27th graduating class gathered to thank the headmaster for 5 years of guidance. Ah, that ceremony. What a miserable, terrible thing it was for me. Still half inside the fog of the sedative, unable to think clearly about living or dying either one, I walked back through the school gate one more time. I wanted, more than anything, to see his face once more, to see how he'd look at me. That was the only thing holding me together, that single, thin thread. He was there at the entrance, as always, in his same worn frock coat, and when he saw me, he smiled, the same warm, dignified, compassionate smile he always wore. Nothing in it had changed at all. "Ah, Miss Amakawa, good morning. I need a word with you. We still have a little time." He led me, almost taking my hand, up the front stairs and down the corridor to an empty classroom at the far end, still wearing that same kind, elevated, compassionate look. "Well, has your father spoken to you? Have you decided about Osaka?" Nothing in his face carried the faintest trace of what had happened between us 3 nights before. His skin looked smooth, almost luminous, a saint's gentle smile drifting around his mouth. For one dizzy moment, I actually wondered, was that night some kind of dream? Have I lost my mind, imagining something that never happened? Even so, with my thoughts still spinning uselessly in circles, I told him, firmly, I think, that I would not go to Osaka. I don't remember feeling much of anything as I said it. My mind was still too numb. He would not let it go so easily. This is for your own good, you understand. If you take this position, I can promise you a fine marriage will follow. There's a young man at that very paper, athletic, well-regarded, just waiting. On and on, warmer and kinder with every sentence, until, head bowed, listening, I glanced up at him just once and saw for the first time what was actually in his eyes. They were cold, fish eyes, pale and hungry, the kind that feed on people. A cruel, calculating light, sharpened to a fine point. Seeing that look, just for that one instant, something in me nearly screamed, "Monster!" and lunged at his throat. I caught it. I bowed my head instead and let out a small sigh, frightened more than anything of my own fury. His voice deepened, grew almost fervent, as though he sensed something and was pressing his advantage. "Miss Amakawa, think of what it would mean for your parents, your sisters, if you refuse. They worry, you know, that if things go on as they are, you may never have the chance at a proper household, a proper life of your own. I say this because I care about you. What do you intend to do with your future? Doesn't it mean anything to you how much thought I've put into this? For your sake?" The sheer gall of it, the dignity, the warmth in every syllable, nearly broke me a second time. I wanted more than I have ever wanted anything, to tell him everything right there and let the world burn around us both. But my resolve had already hardened by then, and I forced myself, shaking, to hold still. "I understand what you're saying, Headmaster, but please, let me think it over a little longer. I won't go against your wishes." It was the first outright lie I had ever told in my life. What I had actually resolved by then was nothing like obedience. If he'd had even the faintest inkling of what I was actually planning as I said those words, I believe he would have fainted on the spot. Looking at his calm, unshakable face, I understood completely that no ordinary means would ever bring a man like him to reckon with what he'd done. If I was the woman from Mars, then he, I decided, must have fallen from Saturn, a devil of some higher order entirely. Whatever it took, I would find a way to make him tremble to the bottom of his soul. Killing him wouldn't be enough. I would make this earth itself a place he could neither live in nor die in, hotter than any frying pan. I smiled and walked out of that room, calm as glass. Miss Tarama was waiting just outside the door, clearly listening. I bowed to her politely, gave nothing away, and went down the stairs. I heard afterward that the two of them stayed behind to talk, but by then, none of it mattered to me anymore. I spent the next hour in the sewing room downstairs, laughing and chatting with my classmates, eating sweets, more relaxed and happy than I believe I had ever been in my life. For that 1 hour, I forgot my height, my ugliness, my Mars. I simply let myself be a girl, saying goodbye to friends she would miss. And it was, I think, the single happiest hour of my entire life. The ceremony itself I have to describe in some detail because it was a performance unlike anything else this world has ever staged. The headmaster's cruelty dressed up so beautifully, so respectably, that not one soul in that hall recognized what they were watching. It was theater performed for an audience of one, a long, terrible torment aimed squarely at me and me alone. The students opened with the national anthem, and from the first note of that pure, solemn melody, I felt my whole body start to shake. Some deep animal urge telling me to run. The anthem as torture chamber. Then the school inspector, Viscount Tonomiya himself, rose to speak on behalf of the parents, cataloging every small virtue of the headmaster's character in such loving, exhaustive detail that the whole hall sat rapt with solemnity. Then came the report on the statue fund, and sweet, unknowing Aiko, our finest student, our great beauty, stepped forward to present the full sum. And I watched the headmaster receive it with a face of calm, faintly pleased satisfaction. And then, after Kawamura's dry recitation of accounts, the headmaster rose himself to deliver his thanks. What tears in his voice, what sincerity, what dignity in his bearing. And precisely because of all that dignity, precisely because it was so beautifully performed, no speech in the history of the world has ever been more grotesque. I have no children of my own, he told him, and so I have always considered every one of you my true children. In these 5 years, I have committed to memory every name, every face, every disposition, watched each of you grow, unmarked and flawless as polished jade. To send you now out into a world so full of storms and injustice on this final day of parting, how could I possibly feel it calmly? Because you are so gentle, so lovely. My grief is deeper than a mother's watching her brave sons march off to war. Life itself is a battlefield. Our society today is dressed up beautifully by science and progress. But strip that away, and it is no different from the wild, the jungle, the dark heart of Africa, a ceaseless struggle of eat or be eaten, in spirit as much as in flesh. Out of that struggle grows every injustice, every corruption, filling every corner of it with the same brutal logic. You, gentle and tender as you are, must understand from today that difficult, dangerous choices between right and wrong wait for you at every turn. All of human history until now has been a history made by men, a history of struggle passed from hand-to-hand combat to the clash of armies, and now, in our age, to the struggle of money. Bow and arrow became rifle. Rifle has become currency. And just as any atrocity was once excused in service of victory in war, so today, provided it stays hidden and outside the reach of law, any cruelty is quietly permitted in service of wealth, status, and name. Put more plainly still, in the world as it stands, in nations and in individuals both, only the coldest, most ruthless among us, willing to trample conscience and humanity alike without a flicker of guilt, can ever truly win. It is hardly an exaggeration to say the modern man is a soldier fighting a war fought in currency instead of blood, that only the man capable of naked violence and cunning, wielded without shame, rises to become victor and master, while the decent, the honest, sink down into failure and weakness. Look anywhere around you, and you will see the proof of it everywhere. And so you must be glad to have been born women. Some of you will know the tale of Akechi Mitsuhide in the old puppet plays, betraying and murdering his own lord to seize power, snapping at his mother and wife when they tried to stop him. This is no matter for women and children. It has always been this way. and it remains this way now. Women, since the beginning of the world, have left that ugly, corrupted struggle entirely to men and claim for themselves instead a life devoted wholly to beauty and to love. Cooking, sewing, the raising of children, beautifying the home, making it peaceful, teaching the next generation gentleness and grace. And through that purity, that devotion, you have slowly tamed the savage struggle of arms and violence and built out of it the safe and comfortable civilization we all now enjoy, beyond anything our ancestors could have imagined. So you must never be afraid. I have tried to plant in each of you a love of peace, a spirit of endurance, a devotion to beauty. It is with that spirit that you must go out and meet the cruel, bloodless, shameless world that men have built. A duty carried in your blood since long before history began to be written. If you simply devote yourselves every day with all your strength to purifying and gentling this world according to that same beautiful, patient instinct, building, however slowly, a world ruled at last by women's virtue rather than men's greed, that alone will be enough. That alone will be more than enough. It isn't difficult. It isn't complicated. A woman's beautiful instinct within the home, her pure, quiet love, is the one weapon strong enough to defeat men at their own game. The only weapon they cannot answer. However rough, however bloodless a man may seem, inside a home guarded by a woman's boundless patience and love, he will find himself calmed to his very foundations and slowly, without ever realizing it, shaped by that influence for the better. Cursed is the household torn apart by a woman's discontent. I hope with everything in me that each of you will build a warm and healthy household soon, raise many honest, upright children, and help build a Japan cleaner, brighter, more just, and stronger than the one we leave you. I ask nothing more of any of you. It is for this hope alone that I have given my entire life to this work. I say it again, you are all my children. And it is with that thought, sending my children out today into so noble a struggle, that I bid you farewell. The applause when he finished was a wave that swallowed the entire hall. It went on and on, tears and sighs rippling through the crowd behind it. And then, just as at graduation, came Auld Lang Syne, sung through everyone's tears. What a moving scene it must have looked like to anyone who didn't know better. What a radiant, holy figure he must have seemed. The moment the ceremony ended, I went straight to the Tonomiya house on my way home and asked to see Aiko, our school's celebrated beauty, its finest scholar, alone. I told her I had something important and private to say, and we shut ourselves in the parlor together. Tonomiya Aiko had been, all through school, my dearest, most secret love. Of all my classmates, she was the only one who truly understood poetry the way I did. We had met quietly, more times than I could count, and more than once in that very ruin, talking about the great emptiness together. But I had never once visited her at home until that day. She was, truly, the steadiest person I have ever known. She heard my whole story without a single tear, without a flinch, just her beautiful mouth pressed firm, her clear eyes reddening slowly with feeling. And when I finished, she let just a little of that feeling show at the corners of her eyes, and said in a calm, resolved, and very beautiful voice, "Thank you, Utako. Now I finally understand something I never could before. Thank you for showing me who my real father is, for the sake of bringing him to account. Whatever your revenge looks like, if it means bringing him to see the truth without anyone else ever learning why, then I think it's a good thing and a right one. However you choose to do it, I won't hold it against you. And if he still refuses to see reason, I'll send the letter you've given me exactly as you've instructed, unopened, unread, no matter what. I trust you completely in this. I have no other way myself to answer for what my father has done, so I leave it entirely in your hands.
But write to me when you get to Osaka, please.
A single tear slid down her cheek as she said it. She didn't even wipe it away, just crossed the room and took both my hands in hers, tight. A handshake that carried 1,000 things unsaid in it. And with that, my preparations were complete. My parents' joy when I told them I would take the Osaka position, and the headmaster's own praise when he came personally to hear it, were both, in their way, extraordinary to witness. And when I asked further for the strange favor of leaving that same evening alone, without saying goodbye to the paper's local office, without ceremony of any kind, even that they granted without much fuss.
But I never went to Osaka.
That same evening, dressed light, a new Western-style outfit, a single handbag, I said my farewells and left the house. Instead of the station, I went straight to the Tonomiya house, told Aiko I was leaving for Osaka at last, and talked her into one final evening together. We had a proper feast at a Western restaurant, and afterward went to a photography studio to have our portrait taken as a keepsake, where, in the private viewing room, we held each other and kissed for a long time, both of us in tears by the end, unable to see each other's faces through them. Aiko, knowing nothing of what I actually intended, insisted on seeing me off at the station, so I let her, boarded the train as though I truly meant to ride it all the way, then doubled back from the very next stop by car and checked into a small, out-of-the-way inn at the edge of town. There, dressed head to toe in black, a second-hand suit, a black hunting cap, dark glasses, walking with a man's stride, I went to work following the headmaster. In my bag, strong cord, a black silk cloth for a hood, an old-fashioned Kodak, a compact flash lamp, wax matches, and a safety razor blade for cutting photographic paper. All of it tested the night before on the inn's own roof, and every piece of it, to the headmaster, worth more terror than any pistol or poison gas. He had no idea, of course. He probably believed, sending me off to Osaka, that he could finally relax. On the evening of the 24th, the day after the ceremony, he left his lodgings dressed formally, morning coat and bowler hat, carrying an important-looking dispatch box, as though heading out on official business, and walked briskly through the evening dusk toward the pine grove out past the edge of town. I followed, heart pounding, and found, exactly as I'd expected, 2 men waiting for him there. A tall, slender shape and a hunched, low one, which resolved, as I got closer, into exactly who I'd guessed. Clerk Kawamura and the handsome Inspector Tonomiya. Out on the road beyond the trees, a car sat waiting in the dark, its cabin light off, 3 young geisha already inside. I tied my bag to my belt, pulled the black cloth over my face, and the moment the 3 men climbed in, I slipped, unseen in the dusk, onto the spare tire mounted at the back, and rode along, curled small. The car headed exactly where I'd known it would, the Hot Spring Hotel. My whole plan from the very start had been built around that hotel. I had studied it for weeks before I ever decided on revenge at all. What a small mercy it was that the car had an open-top design. And what a stroke of luck, almost a miracle, that I happened to have that razor blade with me. While the three of them laughed and carried on in the back, oblivious, I used it to cut a neat U shape in the fabric around the rear window, and none of them noticed a thing. Reaching a hand through the opening, I found the headmaster with his arm around the youngest, prettiest of the three geisha, and I took, in one motion, her flower hairpin and his bowler hat, both, then dropped from the moving car and ran. The driver shouted, "Thief! Thief!" and gave chase. But on that flat, empty road, in the last of the evening light, my legs did what my legs have always done, and I left him well behind before I'd even started to breathe hard. Back in town, I found Aiko and told her, laughing, about the unexpected windfall my little errand had produced. That hat and that hairpin, I told her, would be waiting for her whenever she wanted them. A private joke between us, if nothing else. Then I hired a second car and went straight on to the hotel itself. That hotel. I had circled it, studied it, dreamed about it long before I ever thought of revenge at all. And the work I was about to do there, the work I had given up my whole life to complete, could not have been finished anywhere else on Earth. I didn't think the three of them would turn back after such a strange, minor scare. Whoever had reached through that window couldn't possibly be connected, in their minds, to anything real, and certainly not to a girl who, as far as anyone knew, was already well on her way to Osaka. I was nearly certain they'd shrug it off as some odd little accident and press on with whatever they'd planned for the night. So I had the driver drop me short of the hotel, at the bridge just before it, and made my way the rest of the distance on foot, down a narrow side lane, to the shadowed side of the building. There, in the dark beside the fence, I listened until I caught, faint through an open third-floor window, the sound of the headmaster's laughter drifting down with the light. I let myself breathe again. I went over the fence without a sound, up the emergency stairs to the third floor, out along a sturdy copper drain pipe, and up onto the roof. And even I, the woman from Mars, felt my stomach turn when I glanced down for one unguarded second and saw the courtyard's stone paving lit pale by a garden lantern, impossibly far below. I made it, finally, to the peak of the red-tiled roof, tied one end of a length of cord to the base of the lightning rod at the very top, wound the other end around my own waist, and worked my way down the steep slope until I reached the eaves, where I could look in through the transom window without being seen. The whole third floor, it turned out, was one long observation lounge, and, the night being warm and close before the storm, every upper pane stood open. I could see the whole room, corner to corner, as clearly as if I'd been standing inside it. I won't try to describe in full what I saw in that room. I don't have the stomach for it, even now. I'll set down only what matters. Amid potted palms and banana leaves, gaudy gilt furniture arranged like a stage set, Inspector Tonomiya, well-built, respectable, and Clerk Kawamura, his pale, humped back bare and glistening, and the headmaster himself, bald and hairy as a bear, were entertaining themselves with the three young women from the car, plus two more local geisha, older, 5 women in all, in a state I can only call frenzied. Dancing, leaping, crawling, weeping, laughing, barely human, any of them, in what the lamplight showed me. For a while I simply watched, stunned. I remembered the headmaster's speech from that afternoon. The modern world is a world built for men. And I looked at what that had actually built. this monstrous little carnival of appetite, and felt something close to vertigo at the distance between the two. Then I remembered myself. I leaned out over the edge of the roof, upside down, and steadied the Kodak. I struck a single wax match, a small, deliberate flare, and waited for every face in that room to turn toward the sound before I fired the flash. The light must have carried clear across to the far wall. I dropped the spent flash lamp into the dark garden below, and the confusion in that room broke wide open. Someone screamed and grabbed for a robe. What was that? That was bright. Sounded like it crackled. A shooting star, probably. Don't be foolish. It's overcast tonight. No, stars can flash through clouds sometimes. I saw it happen once when I was young. Strange night for it. It sounded like it came from right outside the window. And then the headmaster himself, shuffling toward the window to look. That was the moment something in me, already dangerously lightheaded with the whole insane momentum of the evening, decided to press further. I let the camera and the bag both slip down into the drain pipe, out of my way. I let my hair down, long and wild, over my shoulders. I pulled the black cloth over my chest to hide the shirt beneath it, and leaned my whole upper body out over the edge of the roof, hair hanging down, and let out a high, keening, almost mournful cry into the dark. "Headmaster!" The light spilling out from the room caught my face clearly, and I watched the headmaster's hands lock onto the window frame, his eyes going white and wide, his jaw dropping open, his tongue lolling out pale and slack against his own naked, ridiculous body. He looked so absurd that I laughed out loud before I could help it. Ho ho ho! Ha 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 ha! Hee 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 hee! The room went up like a struck hive. Ah! Eek! Someone come quick! Screaming, scrambling, grabbing at anyone's clothes but their own. Women fleeing toward the door, one collapsing outright into a chair. Chairs going over, a table crashing, glassware shattering, bottles rolling and clattering across the floor. A woman's hair hanging loose and upside down off the eave of a third-story roof, laughing in the middle of the night. No one, seeing that, could have believed it was human. Then, just as suddenly, it went quiet again, leaving only the headmaster and, standing rigid on either side of him, staring up at me exactly as he was, Inspector Tonomiya and Clerk Kawamura. Looking at the three of them frozen there, I laughed once more from somewhere deep in my chest. Ho 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 ho! Do you know who I am, gentlemen? Headmaster? Inspector Tonomiya? Mr. Kawamura? The woman from Mars. Ho 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 ho! Hee 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 hee! Ha 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 ha! The headmaster's eyes rolled white, his tongue still hanging loose, and he went over backward like a temple statue toppled in an earthquake. The other two didn't even glance at him, just stood there, staring up at my face, until I hauled myself back up the rope to the peak of the roof, dropped onto all fours, and let out one long, unsteady breath. I wasn't sure in that moment whether I even had the strength left to stand. But there was no time to find out. The fled geisha had clearly raised the alarm downstairs. I could hear voices below and 2 or 3 old emergency lanterns bobbing across the dark garden. I didn't panic. I gripped the bag tight in my teeth, left the cord tied where it was, and crossed to the opposite slope of the roof from the one I'd climbed. There, one last time, I looked up at a few stars showing faintly through the clouds and felt my chest fill, unexpectedly, with something that made my eyes sting. For one moment, I wanted nothing more than to run down that slope and drop straight into the dark courtyard below and end it right there. But the sound of feet climbing the emergency stairs pulled me back to myself. I found the radio antenna wire strung just below the eave, followed it down to the roof of the next building over, dropped from a low branch of a big pine growing close to the fence, and out over the wall. I cut across the paddy fields by the footpaths, straight toward the local rail line, and made the last train with barely a minute to spare. Less than an hour later, I was back at my inn. My room was already made up, the bed turned down, and on the pillow sat a cup of cold, bitter tea, steeped far too long. I drank it down in 2 or 3 swallows without even sitting first, and it tasted, somehow, wonderful. All the strength that had drained out of me on that rooftop, wanting to die, came flooding back 100-fold. The film developed perfectly, every frame. Small as it was, it showed all 5 women and all 3 men turned toward the camera in that one unmistakable instant of shock. So clear I hardly needed to enlarge it. Looking at it, I laughed to myself, thinking how much trouble I could have spared myself if I'd known the photograph alone would be enough, without risking my neck for a hat and a hairpin as insurance. I slept, deeply and completely satisfied, from that night straight through until nearly noon the next day. I got up a little after noon and started writing this letter immediately, at full speed. Between the 3 copies I have to produce, it may be well past midnight, maybe even sunrise before I finish. But that's all right. Before the sun comes up, I'll have prints made from last night's negatives, enough to slip 3 or 4 into each envelope. I'll seal all 3 letters separately, with instructions for the order they're to be sent, and leave them tonight, the 26th, once the town's gone quiet, in Aiko's mailbox. Then I'll take the things I stole weeks ago from the school's chemistry room, the solvent, the cotton wool, along with the fuel I bought yesterday, and go back one last time to that ruined building where I spent so many quiet, lonely hours as a girl. I'll pile the straw and bamboo and paper sports equipment together the way I've planned it, soak it down, set a bare candle in the fuel-damp tatami where it will burn slowly enough to give me 20 minutes before the whole room goes up. I'll soak a cloth in the solvent, hold it to my face, and lie down beneath the pile. I know myself well enough to know I'm the kind of person who goes lightheaded from petrol fumes alone. Breathing this much of it, I may lose consciousness, may even die outright, long before the fire itself ever reaches me. Headmaster Morisu, this is how I return the gift you gave me, the gift of becoming a woman. And with it, I give my truest, dearest love, Tonomiya Aiko, the one chance she'll ever have to be a proper, devoted daughter to her mother in the way she's always deserved. This is the only way I know to settle everything, so that I can go home, finally, to the emptiness I came from. Please take delivery of the woman from Mars's parting gift, the body of the charcoal girl. My body belongs to you now, forever.